If you make your worth dependent on who stays or who leaves, you have already surrendered your freedom. That is where the chains are formed on your wrists, but deep in your soul. Too many live as though their identity can only be validated through the gaze of another, through the approval of a partner, through the loyalty of someone they fear losing. But what kind of life is that? To wait trembling day after day, wondering if their presence affirms you or if their absence will destroy you. That is not love. That is captivity. You were not created to beg for belonging. You were not designed to stand at the mercy of another's wavering affections. Your worth does not rise when someone chooses you, nor does it diminish when they walk away. Worth is not granted by man. It is eternal, unshakable, and placed within you from the beginning. But until you believe this, until you live it, will always hand your freedom over to fragile hands. Growth begins where dependence ends. The moment you decide that your peace, your confidence, your future are not negotiable commodities in another's possession, you step into true power. It is then that love transforms from a desperate need into a deliberate choice. You do not cling, you do not beg, you do not break, you choose. And that choice is no longer rooted in fear, but in strength. Think of this. If the ground beneath your feet could collapse at any moment, would you build your house upon it? Yet many build their very identity on the fragile foundation of another's commitment. They say, if they love me, I am enough. If they leave me, I am nothing. But do you not see the folly? To stake eternity on the shifting winds of human loyalty is to guarantee heartbreak. True stability is not found in the promises of others, is forged in the quiet growth of your own soul. There will be moments when love departs, when people you trusted reveal their frailty, when the ones you thought permanent revealed they were only passing through. And in those moments, if you have not built yourself daily, you will collapse. But if you have stood in growth, if you have chosen to strengthen yourself in silence, in discipline, in truth, then, even as they go, you remain. You may feel the ache, but you will not be undone. This is why growth is sacred. Growth is not vanity. It is not selfishness. It is stewardship. It is the refusal to allow your soul to rot in dependence on what can never be guaranteed. It is the quiet, daily work of becoming whole, so that when love comes, it is welcomed, not worshipped. And when love leaves, it is grieved, not fatal. The wisdom of the ancients and the voice of eternity align on this. You were created complete. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. Relationships are not meant to complete you. They are meant to complement you. But until you know your wholeness, you will keep entering love as a beggar instead of a builder. And beggars always lose what builders can sustain. I tell you, there is a higher way. To live so rooted in your own growth that you become unmovable. To walk into relationships not as one seeking to be filled, but as one overflowing. To stand so complete within yourself that love becomes a choice, not a crutch. This is freedom. This is strength. This is the life you were always meant to live. And so, I leave you with this. Stop surrendering your freedom to the hands of those who may or may not stay. Stop waiting for validation in the fragile embrace of another's approval. Build yourself daily. Stand in your wholeness. Grow until your very being testifies that you are enough. For when you rise in this truth, you will discover a love that is no longer desperate, but divine, and the moment you realize your worth cannot be taken, you will never again fear who comes or who goes. You will only walk forward, unbroken and free. Most relationships do not end because of sudden betrayal. They do not collapse only in the heat of arguments or the sting of infidelity. No, most relationships begin to wither quietly, almost invisibly, in the silence of stagnation. The love that once felt alive begins to suffocate, not from fire, but from the absence of growth. And the tragedy is this: many never even notice it happening until it is too late. At first, the connection is vibrant, there is laughter, discovery, newness. Every word feels electric. Every moment feels alive. But in time, if both souls are not committed to the daily work of becoming more and more patient, more disciplined, more whole, that fire dims. It does not vanish overnight. It fades like embers left unattended. And when growth halts, resentment begins. Understand this deeply. Love cannot sustain itself on memory alone. Yesterday's affection cannot feed today's hunger. Yesterday's passion cannot carry tomorrow's trials. Love is living, breathing, moving. It demands that both hearts keep ascending. Without growth, what was once sacred becomes ordinary, and what was once extraordinary becomes a burden. And when two people stop building themselves, they stop building each other. That is when the erosion of the soul begins. Think about the seasons. A tree that does not continue to grow eventually withers. Its branches no longer stretch toward the light. Its roots no longer deepen in the soil. It becomes brittle, vulnerable, easy to break. The same is true in love. If you are not stretching higher, reaching deeper, learning daily, then no matter how beautiful your beginning, your end will taste of emptiness. And here lies the hard truth. You cannot blame love for this decay. Love is not to be accused. It is the lack of discipline that rots what could have been eternal. Too many enter into relationships seeking comfort, not transformation. They want someone to hold them, but not someone to challenge them. They desire peace, but not accountability. They say, "Love me as I am," but refuse to ask, "How can I become more?" And in this refusal, they starve the very relationship they once prayed for. But hear this: love without growth is not love, is dependence dressed in romance. True love does not leave you as it found you. True love refines. It stretches. It purifies. It demands that you rise to heights you never thought you could reach. And if you are unwilling to grow, then you are unworthy of the very love you desire. This is why you must focus on your own becoming. For if you do not grow, you will choke the very relationship you hope to sustain. Do not expect another person to carry the weight of your unfulfilled potential. Do not demand that someone else ignite passion in a soul that has stopped seeking its own fire. Growth is not optional, it is the very oxygen of love. Ask yourself, are you becoming harder to resent or easier? Are you growing in patience or repeating the same wounds? Are you deepening in wisdom or circling the same arguments year after year? These are the questions that separate those who endure from those who fade. Because relationships do not fall apart, suddenly they are undone by the slow corrosion of unchallenged habits, unresolved wounds, and unfulfilled growth. So what must you do? Build daily. Seek wisdom daily. Discipline your heart daily. Do not wait for crisis to force transformation. Do not wait until your partner has drifted so far that your cries cannot reach them. Choose now, while love still breathes, to water it with your own becoming. For when you grow, you inspire growth. When you evolve, you awaken those around you. And when two people are committed not just to each other, but to the pursuit of higher living, nothing can break them. This is the path few choose, because it is costly. Growth requires dying to old selves. It requires the humility to admit weakness and the courage to confront it. It is not glamorous. It is not easy. But it is the only way to sustain what truly matters. And so, let this truth settle deep within you. Most love dies not because it was false, but because it stopped growing. Do not let yours be another grave of potential. Rise, build, transform it till resentment has no soil to root itself in. And love, alive and burning, can stand unshaken. For when you choose growth, love ceases to be fragile, it becomes eternal. Do not chase being loved, chase becoming unignorable. This is the shift that separates the weak from the unbreakable, the seeker of crumbs from the one who becomes a feast. Too many live their lives begging for affection, adjusting their souls to win the approval of those who can never see their true worth. They twist themselves into shapes that are unrecognizable, silencing their own calling, shrinking their own light just to be chosen. And yet, even when chosen, they remain empty, because their foundation was never in growth, was in validation. But hear this: love that is begged for will always be unstable. Love that must be convinced will always come at the cost of your dignity. And love that is built upon desperation will collapse under the first storm. You were not born to plead for loyalty. You were not placed here to prove your value to those blind to it. You were designed to rise, to become, to embody such discipline and strength that your presence cannot be ignored. Think of the sun. It does not beg the earth to notice it. It simply shines, unrelenting, steady, faithful, and the world has no choice but to respond to its light. So too must you become, a force so anchored in your own becoming that love, respect, and loyalty orbit around you not because you demand them, but because you have become undeniable. Success in relationships does not come from chasing attention. It comes from becoming so complete within yourself that loyalty feels inevitable. People do not remain where they feel entertained. They remain where they feel transformed. And if you are constantly chasing, constantly pleading, constantly proving, you are not transforming anyone. You are only exhausting yourself. Ask yourself this: why do I want to be loved? Is it because I fear being alone, or because I am overflowing with something worth giving? If your answer is fear, you will always be enslaved to the opinions of others. If your answer is fullness, then your love will never run dry. Because when you are whole, you give out of abundance, not out of lack. And when you give from abundance, love becomes an offering, not a bargain. This is where discipline comes in. To become unignorable is not to become arrogant, not to demand attention, not to scream for recognition. It is to live with such integrity, such consistency, such unwavering dedication to your growth that others cannot help but take notice. It is to silence the noise of insecurity by daily choosing excellence. It is to refuse to be common in a world addicted to mediocrity, but this requires courage. It is easier to chase being loved than to commit to becoming whole. It is easier to conform to someone's preference than to cultivate your purpose. It is easier to beg for crumbs than to build a table. Yet ease has never produced greatness. Ease has never built legacies. Ease has never created love that lasts. You must decide: will you live as one who begs for affection, or as one who embodies such strength that affection becomes a response, not a request? Will you waste your life in the shallow pursuit of being chosen, or will you discipline yourself into becoming a soul so unshakable, so radiant, that you cannot be overlooked? When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you stop begging, you start building. And when you stop shrinking for others, you begin expanding into the one you were always meant to be. Love then shifts. It is no longer about filling your emptiness. It becomes about multiplying your fullness. You do not enter relationships seeking to be validated. You enter relationships bringing value. And that difference changes everything. So take this truth and let it pierce your soul. You were never meant to live for the applause of others. You were meant to live with such depth, such discipline, such divine alignment, that the world has no choice but to honor your presence. Stop chasing love. Become the kind of soul that cannot be ignored. For when you rise into your fullness, love ceases to be something you beg for. It becomes something that flows toward you, inevitable and unstoppable. Every time you silence your own calling to preserve a relationship, you trade eternity for comfort. And what is comfort if it costs you your destiny? What is companionship if it demands the death of your purpose? This is the unspoken tragedy of so many lives. People who had greatness written on their hearts. But they dimmed their own fire so another would not feel burned by it. They quieted their vision, they shrank their voice, they hid their brilliance all in the name of keeping peace. But what peace can there truly be if you are at war with yourself? You were not born to bow before the insecurities of another. You were not called to carry the fragile egos of those too small to embrace your rising. And yet, how many have tied themselves to the weight of others, drowning not because of storms, but because they refuse to swim upward into who they were created to be. True love never demands the death of your purpose, demands the rise of your strength. If what you call love requires you to bury your talents, suppress your dreams, and silence your soul, then what you have is not love. It is bondage disguised as affection. It is fear dressed up as loyalty. Real love will never ask you to shrink. Real love calls you higher. It says, grow, become, ascend, and, in your rising, I too will rise. Anything less is not love but control. Consider the seed buried in the ground. It is destined to push through the soil to rise toward the light. But imagine if it said, I will remain hidden. I will stay small because the earth around me might not welcome my breaking through. Would that not be absurd? And yet, how many souls have done exactly that, choosing to remain buried rather than risk the discomfort of growth? They fear being alone. They fear rejection. They fear what others will say. And so they forfeit their calling for companionship that cannot even withstand the weight of truth. But hear me. When you silence your calling, you not only rob yourself, you rob the world. You rob generations. You rob the very people you thought you were protecting. Because the greatest gift you could give to those around you is the fullness of who you are. When you rise into purpose, you show others what is possible. When you stand tall in truth, you grant others the courage to do the same. By denying your own growth, you deny others their freedom. Do not be deceived. The path of purpose is costly. It will cost you approval. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you the false security of relationships built on fear. But what you gain in exchange is immeasurable. You gain freedom. You gain clarity. You gain the unshakable peace of knowing you are living true. And the love that meets you on that path is not shallow, it is unbreakable, because it is built on truth, not illusion. This is why you must examine your connections. Ask yourself, does this love make me smaller or greater? Does it silence my calling or amplify it? Does it demand my compromise or celebrate my becoming? These are not soft questions. They are piercing, but necessary. For the wrong relationship will cost you everything, and the right one will cost you nothing but fear. You cannot trade eternity for comfort. You cannot trade divine calling for human approval. You cannot bury your purpose just to keep someone who is never strong enough to stand beside it. Stop shrinking. Stop silencing. Stop dimming. Let your light blaze with unashamed strength. Let your voice rise with unshakable conviction. Let your purpose unfold without apology, because in the end, the only love worth keeping is the love that survives your rising. And the only relationship worth building is the one that stands not in the shadow of your silence, but in the brilliance of your becoming. So choose growth over comfort, purpose over peacekeeping, destiny over approval, for the love that is real will never be lost when you rise. And the love that demands your silence was never worthy of you to begin with. Build yourself daily, not for applause, not for validation, not for the fleeting praise of others, but because storms will come, and they always do. And when they arrive, as they surely will, it will not be the applause that sustains you. It will not be validation that anchors you. It will be the growth you cultivated in silence, the discipline you forged when no one was watching, the strength you chose when weakness would have been easier. Growth is the only form of love that cannot betray you, because it is the one covenant you can never lose, the covenant with yourself. We live in a world obsessed with recognition. Everyone wants to be seen, to be noticed, to be celebrated. But applause is fickle. Today, they cheer. Tomorrow, they forget. Today, you are the hero. Tomorrow, you are the outcast. If your foundation rests on the shifting sands of their approval, you will collapse when the crowd turns away. But if your foundation is built on the daily chiseling of your soul, on the slow, steady building of character, wisdom, and strength, then you cannot be shaken. You are not swayed by cheers, nor destroyed by silence. You stand. There is a sacred discipline in building when no one sees you. The hidden hours, the quiet mornings. The nights when sleep tempts you, but purpose compels you, these are the moments that shape unbreakable souls. Do not despise the days of small beginnings. Do not curse the seasons where no one acknowledges your effort. Those are the seasons where your roots grow deep. Those are the seasons where the unseen growth becomes the unshakable foundation. Think of the oak tree. Its roots sink deep long before its branches stretch high. The storms do not uproot it because its unseen work is greater than its visible glory. You must live the same way. Build deep before you build wide. Grow silently before you are celebrated publicly. For it is better to be strong and unseen than applauded and fragile. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every loss, these are storms sent not to destroy you, but to reveal whether you have been building. And if you have, you will not crumble. You may bend, but you will not break. You may weep, but you will not be undone. Because daily growth produces a strength that cannot be taken. So stop waiting for applause to justify your effort. Stop waiting for validation to confirm your worth. The crowd was never your master, and their approval was never your inheritance. Build yourself because it is who you are called to be. Build yourself because every day you choose discipline over distraction, you rise higher. Build yourself because every moment you invest in growth, you make betrayal powerless. Storms powerless, loss powerless. Love will come and love will go. Friends will stand and friends will fall away. Seasons will change and people will reveal their impermanence. But the one thing that cannot be taken from you is the growth you chose, the wisdom you cultivated, the strength you forged. That is your eternal companion. That is the love that never betrays. This is not about selfishness, it is about stewardship. You are entrusted with a life, a mind, a soul, a destiny. To neglect it for the sake of applause is to waste it. To abandon it for the sake of validation is to betray it. But to cultivate it daily is to honor it. And in honoring it, you discover that you have honored the very one who entrusted it to you. So rise. Build when no one is clapping. Grow when no one is watching. Strengthen yourself when no one cares. For the day will come when storms rage and betrayal cuts deep. And in that hour, it will not be applause that saves you, it will be the strength you have forged in secret. For when all else fades, when love leaves, when crowds disperse, when storms strike, the one who has built themselves daily will stand unbroken, unshaken, and utterly free.